the American fight for freedom. The rise of the Iron Wolf. In the heart of the American wilderness, where the towering trees of ancient forests whispered secrets of a forgotten time, the legend of the Iron Wolf was born. It is said that long before the first European settlers set foot upon the shores of this land, the spirits of the earth and sky watched over the vast expanse. Among these spirits there was one who took on the form of a mighty wolf, a creature born of iron and fire, embodying the will of the earth and the fierceness of the American frontier. The Iron Wolf was no ordinary beast. His fur was like the bark of the oldest trees, woven with streaks of silver lightning. His eyes shone with the light of distant stars, and his howl could summon storms. The native peoples of the land, from the high peaks of the Rocky Mountains to the dense plains below, spoke of him in awe, calling him the protector of their freedom, a guardian who would rise whenever their lands were threatened. But the world was changing. The winds carried with them new invaders, foreign men in strange clothing, with their iron guns and their hunger for land. They came in ships, darkening the skies with their sails, and bringing with them not only their weapons but also the seeds of greed and conquest. The people of the land watched as their world began to shift under the weight of foreign ambition. Their spirits began to stir, uneasy with the coming of this new age. One fateful night, when the moon hung heavy in the sky, a tribe of native warriors gathered around a sacred fire. They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes flicking to the shadows as if something unseen was listening. Among them was Chief Running Bear, an old warrior whose heart still burned with the fire of youth. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a call to arms that could not be ignored. "The time has come for us to rise," he said. "The earth speaks to me in dreams, and I hear the cry of the Iron Wolf. The invaders are upon us, and we cannot stand idly by. We must fight for the land, for our freedom, for the lives of our children. The spirits are restless, and the wolf waits." The warriors nodded in agreement. They knew that they were not fighting just for survival, but for the very essence of the land they had always called home. But no one knew exactly what the arrival of the Iron Wolf meant. Was he truly the protector they had been promised? Or was he something far more dangerous, a force of nature that could not be controlled? That night, as the warriors made their preparations, a sudden howl echoed across the mountains. It was the Iron Wolf, his voice shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sound was both a call to arms and a warning. The battle was coming, and with it, a force that even the strongest among them might not be able to defeat. As dawn broke the next day, the warriors mounted their horses and set off toward the valley where they would face the invaders. But as they rode, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and the wind howled with a strange power. The Iron Wolf was near. What they didn't know was that the invaders had also heard the call. Far away in the heart of their camp, a soldier named James was looking toward the horizon, his heart pounding in his chest. He had heard the stories of the wild, of the mysterious creatures that roamed the land, but nothing could have prepared him for what was to come. Something deep in his soul told him that today the world would change forever. The stage was set. The battle would not be fought only with weapons but with the very spirit of the land itself. The Iron Wolf would rise, and with him the fight for freedom would begin. The clash of spirits. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth as Chief Running Bear and his warriors neared the valley, their horses galloping with purpose. The sky had darkened, and an eerie stillness hung over the land, broken only by the distant echo of the Iron Wolf's howl. It seemed to grow louder with each passing moment, as if the very spirit of the wilderness was rallying behind them. As they approached the edge of the valley, the invaders' camp came into view. The soldiers, clad in their iron armor, were gathered around their fires, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. But the air was thick with tension, and even the birds seemed to have gone silent. There was no mistaking it, something ancient and powerful was on its way. Chief Running Bear raised his hand, signaling for his warriors to halt. They crouched low, their eyes scanning the terrain as they prepared for the coming battle. The Iron Wolf was out there watching over them, but they still didn't know what form he would take. Would he appear as the massive creature of legend, or would he take on another guise? Only time would tell. At that moment, a loud crash echoed through the valley, followed by a roar that shook the very ground beneath their feet. The Iron Wolf had arrived. From the depths of the forest, a massive shadow emerged, towering over the trees like a living mountain. His fur shimmered with silver streaks, and his eyes glowed with the fury of 1,000 storms. The earth trembled with each of his steps, and his presence seemed to fill the entire valley. The Iron Wolf was no mere creature. He was a force of nature, a being of untold power who had come to answer the call of the land's protectors. The warriors, though awestruck, knew they had no time to lose. They raised their weapons and charged toward the invaders, their cries echoing in the valley as the Iron Wolf charged beside them. The battle had begun. On the other side, James and the other soldiers heard the sounds of the approaching warriors and the monstrous roar that followed. Panic spread through their ranks as they scrambled to form a defense. They had heard the rumors of the wild creatures that roamed these lands, but they never imagined they would face something like this. James stood at the front of the camp, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword as his heart pounded in his chest. He could see the warriors charging toward them, their faces grim with determination, but it was the sight of the Iron Wolf that froze him in place. The beast was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes burned with a supernatural fire, and its very presence seemed to bend the laws of nature. The soldiers fired their guns, but the bullets seemed to have little effect on the Iron Wolf. He moved with such speed and power that he tore through their ranks, knocking soldiers aside as though they were mere children. The warriors fought bravely, their arrows and spears striking with precision, but it was the Iron Wolf who turned the tide of battle. Amid the chaos, James found himself face to face with the beast. His breath caught in his throat as he stared into the glowing eyes of the Iron Wolf, a creature of myth brought to life before him. The world seemed to slow, and in that moment he realized that this fight was about something far greater than land or power. It was a battle for the very soul of the land, a fight for freedom and survival that stretched back to the dawn of time. As the clash of steel and the roar of the wolf continued, James felt a strange sense of clarity. He had fought for so long under the banner of conquest, but now, he understood that the land had a will of its own. It would not be conquered so easily. With one final, defiant howl, the Iron Wolf charged, tearing through the invaders' ranks like a storm sweeping across the plains. The soldiers faltered, their courage slipping as they faced a force beyond their understanding. One by one they fell back, retreating into the forest, leaving their camp behind in chaos. Chief Running Bear and his warriors stood victorious, but the battle was far from over. The Iron Wolf had led them to this moment, but it was only the beginning of a much larger struggle. The land, the people, and the spirits would continue to fight, each in their own way, until the invaders were driven from their land forever. As the warriors celebrated their hard-won victory, James stood apart from the rest, his mind racing. He had witnessed something that had changed him forever. The land, the creatures, and the people of this place were not to be taken lightly. He had come seeking conquest, but what he had found was a force much greater than anything he had ever imagined. The Iron Wolf's howl echoed through the valley one last time before fading into the distance. It was a promise that as long as the land needed protection, he would rise again.